Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to this Sunday's edition of Keep the Mic On. I know I have been off the past couple of weeks. My name is simply Sherry. I am one of the four hosts that are part of this collective. We are here every Sunday in conversation with an amazing artist. My week is called From Behind the Microphone, where we take the time to get to know the person behind the art, because poets are people too, or artists are people too. I'm going to take a moment and go ahead and kick it to the one, the only Miss Cayenne.
Good evening. Happy Sunday. My name is Miss Cayenne. I'm a poet and I know it. And my segment for Keep the Mic On is called Passion Projects, the root behind the why. And it's on second Sundays. And as always, guys, it's going to be another great show tonight, a great conversation. So make sure you stay tuned, get your coffee, get your popcorn, get whatever you need for your creature comforts, and join us tonight for this awesome conversation. I'm going to kick it to the one, the only girl genius.
I love how we all come with the one and only.
Because
Like,
we are. We're unique.
like that's just the appropriate intro. Like
Mhm.
it's the best thing ever. Hey all, I am Girl Genius. Happy to be back. For those of you who saw us yesterday, we were around doing an open mic for Poetry Fest. So that three of us were sitting in doing that. So, but this is the first time we've been back all together in the same space in about a month. Yay! So
Yay.
happy to be back. My week is let's talk about the usually book, but I just want to expand into other tangible things and talk about process and how you got there. And if it's books, it's what does it take to write a book? So I like picking people's brain about process. And I am the first week of every month, which means I will be back next week and I will talk about my amazing guest at the end of this show. Meanwhile, it is not my week. It is that way. It is it is this amazing poet over here's week. And so I will toss it over to KaNikki J.
Thank you very much, the one and only girl genius. I mean, because we are the one and onlys. That's what I'm saying. Thank you very much, and thank you for joining us. This is the time that I usually say, tell everybody that we are live right now. Yet they are missing it, and that all of our guests comes on here. They come on here and they volunteer our times. But these platforms are not free. So if you would like to support us, you can support us on our Patreon and our Cash App at Keep the Mic On, so that we can keep the mic on. That's all I'm saying. And so I'm very excited about the guest that I have for tonight. My name is KaNikki Jakarta. You can call me KaNikki Jakarta because that's what my mama named me. Oh, hey mama, because I know she is watching. My mom is my absolute number one fan. And let me just say, she said she had to go get off the phone with me so she could charge her phone and her tablet so she can be sure to see Roscoe. So that says a lot because my mom is my number one fan, but she is not a fan of everybody's. Trust what I say. So you definitely should be on here. So I'm going to try to interview one of my favorite people, one of my favorite poets, as I know him, but I'm going to try to interview him as I don't, so that I can make sure that I get the questions that you guys will want answered. And Girl Genius can't go anywhere. She's just going to be on here. Everybody was trying to take themselves out, but everybody couldn't get out. StreamYard was like, no, stay. Hold your beautiful face in here and all that. Anyway, so as you can see, I'm very silly on screen. This is what you get. This is how I am. My week is called Poets and Platforms, and I take joy in interviewing poets who are organizers, who have platforms for the arts, because sometimes in different cities, there are no platforms for different types of arts. And sometimes these poets who are amazing have to go out of town in order to be a poet and then come back in town in order to organize platforms for poetry and different types of artistic experiences. So I am going to read this very what I want to call it very modest short bio that I don't know that who wrote, but like I said, every time when I read a bio, the bio is expired. And let me tell you why, because people that I bring on here, they're constantly grinding, constantly doing things. And I was trying to look because Roscoe is one of the people, I think he's the second person, I don't know who the other person is, that we have brought back in the little over 2 years that we have been doing Keep the Mic On. We haven't had any repeat guests, but I definitely wanted to bring him back because he had all these spectacular things happen during the time from I interviewed him in the beginning. So Douglas Powell / Roscoe Burnems is a father, husband, educator, spoken word artist, author, and blossoming comedian in that order. Roscoe uses his platform and talents to create challenging conversations in hopes to find equitable solutions. He is a national Poetry Slam champion, TEDx youth speaker, 3-time published author, Richmond, Virginia first ever poet laureate, and star creator of the first ever poetry and comedy special, Traumedy, streaming on Amazon Prime and other platforms. That it is my pleasure, my honor, and with all enthusiasm and everything. I'm loving the smile, to welcome you, my friend, your homie, Roscoe Burnems.
Hey.
Hey. How are you?
I am doing well. I had to move to the couch. I needed something more comfortable.
Be a little comfortable. I got you. A little comfortable. All right. I'm going to ask you to start with the piece, and then cool. I'm going to I'm comparing your bio from last time to this time, so I'm gonna see what's gonna happen in between that. So yes, I'm gonna remove myself and let you do it.
So this is some new work that I'm really, really proud of, and I plan to do more with. I was recently commissioned to do some work with the Department of Conservation and Recreation around food justice, environmental justice, things of that nature. And so this poem was birthed out of that event, out of that work. The sun beats down on what whiteness calls a wasteland. Steam resurrects from city streets in waves of heat. Sweat leaks from the skin, smells like soda or lemonade that contains no actual lemons, like water full of lead poisoning. Would be the perfect summer though for orange slices, cold cucumbers cut into coins, but no one can buy that here. Ain't no Whole Foods in the hood. The people here are surrounded by sun and barren soil. They are at the mercy of secondhand food, boxes of ingredients as long as their names. They get meat that is met with expiration before it's met with customers. Vegetables soaked in salty cans, smells like bullets, smells like badges. Ain't no Whole Foods in the hood. They trek the trek across a city for organic food might as well be a Sahara, where the sun and prices rise, but the income doesn't. The climate here produces no fruit. Heart disease sits upon the stoop, passed down from their parents and poverty. Ain't no Whole Foods in the hood. No herbs and whole grain. Only profiling and pain, and no hospitals close enough to treat either one. And it's all by design. It has always been by design. In war, they destroy the food supply so their enemies starve. These ain't just food deserts. This desert storm. This a war on health, trying to bury us in our own bodies, but we have always been seeds. They try to turn our soil into concrete, but that black still ain't crack. The people here, they know how to grow survival, because ain't no Whole Foods in the hood. There is project housing where bodies are packed like sardines or slave ships. Drugs are more accessible than pears or progress, where Black bodies have yet to taste the fruit of their labor or fruit without pesticides. And it bugs me to think we were given the unhealthiest meals, still turned out the best athletes. Given bitter fruit, still gave you the sweetest music. Took away the brain food, still gave you inventions that keep America running. They wanted our bodies, but not our diabetes, because ain't no Whole Foods in the hood. They put us in food deserts and ask how we be cactus. How we learned to make all this success out of sand. Process the trauma and the processed food from the chitlins to the Kool-Aid. We took your God-forsaken groceries and made ourselves immortal. I mean, we had to, because ain't no Whole Foods in the hood. And that's that piece.
Wow. That was a lot.
Hopefully in a good way. I hope that was a lot in a good way.
It was educational. It was a lot in a good way. And bring the Whole Foods to the ghetto. That's what I'm trying to say.
Can I get a Whole Foods in the hood though? You know what I mean? Can I get a Whole Foods? Can I get a Wegmans, a Publix, something?
Something. Somebody's replying saying, yes, over here. Ain't no Whole Foods in the hood. I'm just looking at the comments. Probably shouldn't be looking at the comments. Yes.
I'm glad people enjoyed it though.
Yes, so much. I mean, the thing is, because I know you, right? I definitely want to get people to know you. And it's cool that the kid is in the background, no problem. Like we interview people, you know, they be like the kid. I'll be like, bring the kids on, especially when I'm featuring people right in the middle of the feature. Be like, hey, Junior, we trying to do a feature right here.
And I told him right before the show started. I'm like, hey, look, man, I'm gonna need you to like chill out for just a little while. But you know, that's cool. That brings me into
a good question, right? Let's see. I'm trying to figure out how long I have known you. How old is your daughter?
My daughter is 15 now.
Trying to figure out how long have I known you, and were you 15? I'm trying to figure out that when I met you. You were a father when I met you?
I was, and I was still like, I was young. I was still going through like custody stuff. So my daughter was probably about 2 or 3 when I met y'all. So that was probably around like 2009.
That makes sense.
Probably 2009, 2010, somewhere in that area.
That makes sense because I definitely met. You were not the person that I met, right? In a good way, right? Definitely more honed in on being a parent. You know what I mean? Like this is my thing, especially since father is the first thing on your bio, right?
Yes, very much so.
In 2020, when I interviewed you for this show, you had just released Traumedy in October 2019. And then in the beginning of your bio, you talked about being a National Poetry Slam champion. But now your focus at the beginning, like you don't even, I like the fact that you don't even have like, you know, your poet laureate stuff until the end of the bio. At the beginning of the bio is father, husband, educator, spoken word artist, author, you know, then comedian in that order, right? So let's be clear. Like my first focus is being a father. Yeah. Nobody's books. I'm trying to say nobody's books. That's the beginning.
Buy these books. Watch the show.
Yes, but yes, that's the thing. So I'm definitely. We were talking about this when we went to the Women of the World Poetry Festival, and Roscoe was introducing me to one of his friends, and he was talking about how he was a fan of mine, and I was like, "This is so awesome because I met him as a fan of mine, and then became a fan of his." Right. So that's like amazing, and I always, anytime he's close, I always try to go to like his shop. I'm like, oh, Roscoe's featuring. It's close. Let me put that on the calendar. Let me buy some tickets. Let me go to this and feature this because I really enjoy your featured sets. And what I enjoy most about them, and I don't think I really said this, is the relatability to it. Right? You are an amazing storyteller. Right? You just not writing about like this one. The piece that you just read was like a message piece. Right? But a lot of stuff that you write about, the way that you tell it, is a relatability piece, right? You can really feel it, you know, like I've been through that, you know, I know exactly what he's talking about because that's me, that's my mama, that's my cousin. I can really feel that. And that's why I think you are, you know, great on stage as a host, you know, great on stage as a one-man show, because you are definitely telling a story that people can relate to. So speaking of relate, let's talk about Child Roscoe, right? Because everybody wants to know, how do you get to be a writer for a living? Because this is your full-time job, correct?
Yes.
What you do for a living.
I'm an artist, yes.
How does one go from being a child and choosing this? Like, how did it choose you? Did you choose this? Tell us. We would like to know.
So, oh man, the classic, the origin story. Okay. I fell in love with writing when I was super young, and it wasn't poetry. At least I didn't think so. My mom at the time was calling them poems. I wasn't. I wanted to be a songwriter. And I grew up in a Southern Baptist house. My grandmother and her sisters and my aunt all had a singing group. They were the Tool Singers, right? And they would travel to all these different churches, and they would get asked to perform at all these different places and all this kind of stuff. And so I would go with them to these different churches, and I would see them. They felt like when I was real young, they felt like celebrities to me. Like they was legit. My grandma played the piano and the organ. And my aunt Dot played the piano, and then they would sing and they would do all these songs and stuff like that. Churches would love to had them come out, and so I wanted to be a songwriter, right? So shouts out to somebody that says songs are poetry. Songs are poetry. And so but it didn't feel like poems, per se to me, right? Like I felt I wanted to write songs. So that's where I started. And I was writing short stories too. Like when I was an avid reader, so I was writing short stories a lot. So that's where that started. And then as I got older, I think I found hip hop when I was about probably like maybe 8 or 9 years old, right? So I was a little older, late elementary, maybe even early middle, something like that, right? Found hip hop, and then I was like, oh snap, you can do that? Like you can do that on a song? Like you can, that's considered music too? And so then I was like, nah, and I fell in love with that. So then I wanted to do hip hop, I wanted to rap, and I wanted to write for people. And so then there was that. And so I was writing poetry. By the time I got to middle school, I was writing poems, like actual poems. I had read Langston, I read Maya, of course we had been introduced to Poe and Shakespeare and all that kind of stuff by the time you get to middle school. And so I was writing poems, but I wasn't taking it seriously. I didn't start taking it seriously until about high school, when I had an English teacher my junior year of high school who I felt comfortable enough sharing some of the things that I was writing. And she was like, oh yeah, this is pretty good, or you should do more with this, or I like this. And she was really into like spoken word and the whole nine. And she would do these like poetry cafe kind of things where, like an open mic style kind of thing where the kids can come and spit their poems or do whatever. And so she would always like push me to do these things. And so that's where that started. So shouts out to Miss Gardner. Who really pushed me to do more poetry. And so then I never looked back. People liked what I was writing. And then by the time I graduated, I found open mics. And the open mics changed everything. I didn't even know things like that even existed, where people would just gather to hear other people tell their story. And I was like, this is fly. Like, why aren't more people talking about this? And so I started going to open mics, and I started hosting my own like shortly after. Once I got in.
How far after high school did you start hosting your own?
Almost immediately. So there was like, I never talk about this, but there was this event called Word Stage that was like down the street from my house. And I lived out in the middle of Henrico County. Nobody knows what that means because they're not from Richmond, but I lived in Henrico County. It was like 10, 15 minutes outside the city. And then there was an open mic that was like right down the street. And so I would go to this open mic. I was like 17 years old. And I started going there, and I don't even think it was a year later, the dude Eric was like, hey, do you want to be my co-host? And I was like, sure. Like, because I had like, I will say that one thing that did come naturally to me was that I loved being on stage. I was good in front of people. I didn't really have, I got stage fright, but it wasn't like that debilitating kind of stage fright where I would just clam up, right? I'm a person who kind of laughs through their nervousness. So I would get goofy on stage. I would be really silly. I didn't look at myself obviously as a comedian at the time, or, I was just somebody who didn't mind kind of poking fun at themselves, or, didn't take themselves too seriously. And that made it fun for people. You know what I mean? That made it fun for people, and so he let me co-host a couple times, and I started hosting the show after a while when he stepped away. And then I found like, other spots in the city and, other open mics, and I started going to those things. And so I really just blossomed from there. I was still doing music, but the music, it was fun and people liked it, but the poems was really what was like really grabbing people. And so I was like, well, I'm going to go where I feel the strongest, honestly, you know what I mean? And poetry gave me like a way to be vulnerable in a way that music wasn't. Mm-hmm. I didn't have to adhere to these parameters. It didn't have to rhyme. It didn't have to be a certain length. It didn't have to do any of these things. It could really just be whatever I wanted it to be. and that there was more freedom in that for me. So while I still loved hip hop, I still loved music, and I was still willing to be a writer in that realm, in that arena. Poetry was really where I found like a voice for myself and was able to really tell my story or give my observations or whatever the case may be in a way that felt more fluid.
Was it more about how you felt about it or how you thought people responded to it?
It was a little bit of both. I'd be lying if I said that people didn't influence it a little bit. I would go and I would do music, and I would get compliments on the music. My sister Nikki will swear up and down. She's like, "I'm so glad you stopped rapping. It was horrible. It was whack." But I got signed to an independent label in Richmond. We did shows at North Carolina A&T. I did shows all through the city. Like, people was really rocking with my music. You know what I mean? But I will say that the poetry definitely like opened more doors for me. And so, and it felt good. You know what I mean? I didn't feel like I had to be something. The thing about hip hop is that, at least, being 18 years old and trying to, kind of find yourself in that arena, right? Is that you feel like you have to kind of like fit a certain mold. You know what I mean? And in poetry, I didn't have to do that. I could just show up and be whatever I was. Right. And people would just accept that for that. You know what I mean? With hip hop, with rap music, especially being, a black guy, honestly, just anybody in hip hop, really, you feel like you have to fit into a particular type of mode, and you got to talk about certain things, you got to rap about certain things, and like that wasn't my lane. And when it wasn't my lane, people would be like, "Oh, you one of those Talib Kweli common kind of rappers." And I'm like, not that there's anything wrong with that, but I didn't want to be pigeonholed into that either. You know what I mean? Whatever that meant for them. So it came with so many parameters that, like, I was like, spoken word felt more natural to what I wanted to do with my art.
That makes sense. And then, so you really kind of started off hosting, really.
Yeah, like at a really young age, I did. I started hosting at a really young age.
I never knew that, and I always say that hosting helped my stage presence, right?
Facts.
Being able to carry the crowd. So you were carrying the crowd already in the beginning.
And I had a flair for it. You know what I mean? I had a flair for just kind of getting on stage and being really comfortable and making people feel really comfortable and keeping the energy up. Those are all things that you need as a skill sets as a host. And things that you can adopt into your performance art too. Yeah.
So, I have to ask these questions. We talked about this already, right? How I have to ask these questions that everybody who brings you on as an interviewer asks these questions to you. You get these. So let me just get these out of the way.
All right, let's do it.
Let me see. Here we go. How long have you been writing? And who influences your writing? And go.
All right. So I guess I've been writing. I'm using a lot of air quotes today for some reason. I've been writing since probably about 6 or 7. Like I love writing at a really early age, right? So, and I swore up and down I was going to be a songwriter from my grandmother's gospel group, and we were going to become famous. That was my original plan. That did not happen. I wrote one song for them, though, that they ended up using at different churches. I was very proud of that. Anyway, I didn't really here's what I tell people. I didn't start taking writing seriously until about my junior year of high school. So that's really the focal point for me. Like, there's where I really started to like take this seriously and really started to write more and like really pay attention to the craft and, what makes a poem better. My career as an artist, for me, didn't start until I always tell people like 2009, because that's when we went to this regional competition called Southern Fried. And Southern Fried Poetry Festival is like this big, huge regional poetry slam. Teams from all over the Southeast and a little further beyond come to this conference, come to this festival and compete. You know what I mean? And so that was our first year going. Richmond had never sent a team before. And we had no coach. It was just 4 poets that was like, let's just go do this thing. And we grouped up, we made a team, and we made final stage our first year. Got 3rd place in Durham. And I was like, oh, I'm pretty good at this. I think I'm pretty good at this. I was like, let me see how. Say what?
Wasn't I with you?
I think we saw each other there. Yeah, I'm positive we did.
I was there in 2009.
Yeah.
I was there.
So I was like, I think I'm pretty good at this. We was getting 30s. We and nobody knew who we were. You know what I mean? Like they were like, who
I was there because I remember I kept saying, Rich what? Rich who?
Right. And it became like this running joke. People would be like, Rich what? Rich who? Like who are y'all? Nobody knew who we were. Nobody had ever seen us before. And we came and we wrecked shop. And we made it to final stage, got third, and killed it. So I was like, damn, we might be pretty good at this. And that's when I really was like, I think I can turn this into a career. And I was on my way because like by the time 06, 07 came around, I had been going to like a lot of the open mic spots in the city. Most notably Tuesday Versus, which I really credit to giving me my start. Started by the late great Lorna Pinckney, who became like, a friend.
She's right there.
Wait, is she in frame? Where is she?
Right here.
Oh, is that her? Oh snap! I couldn't even see it at first. Okay, yeah.
I keep her right here when I do things online, so she could be like right on my shoulder.
That is the homie. That is the person who really gave me my start. Like, she became a friend. She became a confidant. She became a mentor. Helping me kind of organize, how do I navigate this as a business? Mm-hmm. I don't know if there would be a Roscoe without a Lorna Pinckney. Tuesday Versus helped me get my start. That opened me up to like a bunch of other opportunities. I started doing I linked up with a variety show act, a sketch comedy crew. So I started doing sketch comedy and I started writing in that arena. And so that helped me kind of blossom as a writer. It helped me introduce comedy into my writing. And so that's really when it took off. That was about 07. So really since then, it's really, I've been like full steam ahead on this poetry kick.
Have you been full-time, just a full-time writer and poet this entire time since 07?
No.
Well, what did you do? And what did you, so is this your first time being full-time at this time? Or did you do it before and stopped and did something else?
Yeah, so I gave it a shot probably in like 2011, 2012. Something like that, and then stopped. I had a good little run, but I also didn't really know how to really make being a full-time artist happen. Mm-hmm. And so it was cool for a little bit, but then money slowed down, and I had to figure out something else. I had to get a job. So that's now the world knows I'm bald. Hey. So this particular run, I have been a full-time artist since 2018.
So what do you know now in the business of poetry that you didn't know then?
I realized, at least for me, this isn't necessarily true for everyone, but for me, my money was not in touring. Touring is cool. Touring does bring in some consistent money, when you're on the road for a little while, but you have to navigate that. You have to be really cognizant about like how you're spending, where you're going, what cities you're going to, and what dates. You have to map all that out in advance. It is very time consuming if you don't have somebody to handle that, if you don't have a personal assistant, travel agent, blah, blah, blah. So you're doing all that yourself. And so it can be a lot of legwork, and it can be really exhausting. And so that's what it became for me. I still love touring. I still love being on the road. But it's also a very seasonal thing for me. So what I wasn't doing then that I am doing now, one is I'm a teaching artist. So I do a lot of enrichment programs, after school programs. I'm linked up with a lot of nonprofits to use creative writing is how they frame it, but mostly poetry as a therapeutic process, as a way of talking about social justice, as a way of talking about trauma and resilience. Even just stuff that down to like just figurative language. How do we use the language? What is poetry? Breaking down that kind of stuff for younger children who are like getting into writing. So a lot of that is where I make a lot of my bread and butter. So it ends up becoming like a combination of things. So now recently, I do a lot of nonprofit work, and I've linked up with the school systems to do like larger projects. So one of the things that we're doing is we are assisting Richmond Public Schools in putting on their first ever youth team poetry slam. So all the high schools in the city have organized a poetry slam team. We've put a spoken word artist in each school to work with these kids, get them ready for competition. And then on the 30th of April, we're gonna have them compete. It's an all-day event. And then we'll have the teams compete, and then we'll have a winner. We'll give away some prizes, things of that nature. And so I came in as a consultant. I came in as an organizer, and so I'll get paid from that as well. So like I started doing larger projects where we're talking to the city, or we're getting grant funding, or we're working within the school system where they have a budget, so on and so forth. So there, and I figured out different ways to use my own skill sets and different places to put my work. So I'm doing work with screenwriters and playwrights to use my work there. And I've done things that can live on past me just being on a stage. So doing stuff like Traumedy, where people can like stream it. Every once in a while, Amazon just sends me a check, which is nice. So it's never like, people always think, I think sometimes people think they hear Amazon, they're like, oh man, you rolling in dough. No, that's not how it works. That's just not how streaming works. Streaming just doesn't work like that. You know what I mean? I mean, it's really it's pennies on the dollar, if that. So, but I encourage people to use it, to check out the show, because it brings me more visibility. And then, so, but it's nice when Amazon does cut you a nice little check every once in a while. And so that lives beyond me, right? I don't have to be on a stage. It can exist on a platform that's accessible all the time. Not just when I'm in somebody's city for a day or two, you know what I mean? So I had to figure out ways to, I hate the word because it's been used so much now, is pivot my my skill sets and my talents into different arenas to bring different streams of income.
I don't know if that's pivoting, or if that is, what's another word, bringing poetry into professionalism.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's true. I'll take that. Yeah,
because a lot of people know poetry, but they don't know the business of being a poet, right? So it's saying, what can I do other than, because I mean, I saw Elder not long ago. I've been in the area, in this Virginia area. I'm the V in DMV. I've been here for 22 years next month. And I saw someone who was in the scene when I came in the scene and was asking, what am I doing now as far as like the poetry? And then she said, well, I was going to say, if you was doing the same thing that you were doing when I met you 2 decades ago, then you need to stop doing what you're doing. So
facts though. I mean, that's real.
I'm glad to hear that you're doing more things with your, So I was like, oh, you're probably right? Because if I'm doing the same thing, it's probably not, where's the growth? So you've grown to figure out what else you can do with your talents that you have. So do you think you work best with adults or the youth?
I have more patience for youth.
You do. Nice.
I give a lot of grace to kids, because kids this is their first time experiencing everything. Right. And they're so young, like the human brain isn't fully developed until about 25 years old. So if you are under 25, I give you a lot of grace.
Nice.
Right. Because your brain is still developing. All right. If you are 26 and over, all right, my patience is wearing thin for you. Okay. I expect you to know some things already. I love kids. I worked in education for a long time. I had my own classroom. I taught English. I taught math. I worked as a behavioral specialist, as a tutor. So I had worked in education for a while. And so I just, in general, I do have more patience with kids. Kids are still kind of figuring themselves out. They're learning life. They're experiencing life for the first time. Not to say I don't have any patience for adults. Speaking of children, come here. Because if you're going to walk over here to be nosy, you might as well come over here. Okay. This is my adorable son
with the best dimples in the world. Okay.
Yes, big deep dimples.
Yes.
But yeah, I do. I have more patience with children. Children are figuring out life as, just for the first time, right? They haven't done any of this, and they look to adults. To piggyback on that, they look to adults to help guide them, to help them, because they're expecting the adults to know more. They're expecting the adults to have patience. They're expecting you to be to know, what's ahead. Even if when they're teenagers and they give you a lot of pushback, they still want you there. You gone now? Okay, bye.
I waved, and then that's it. That's all I got.
They're expecting, even when they're teenagers and they're giving you all this attitude and pushback, and they come off like they know it all. They still want you there. They still want you to guide them. They still need you to guide them, because they have no idea. They have no idea what they're doing. So I do have a lot more patience for kids. With adults, we have an adult slam team, which is always a great experience. But I love working with youth. I love teaching. I love watching them grow into themselves and grow into artists. So I love working with kids.
Yeah, I did I went to North Carolina and did it wasn't a workshop. It was more like a performance for these kids. And shout out to Dawn. But it was fifth grade. Was it fifth grade?
Oh, the baby.
No, sixth grade. It was sixth grade. Sixth grade. I was talking about me being a poet and doing blah blah, and then somebody raised their hand right in the middle of me talking. I was like, let's get to the point. How much money do you make in being a poet? I'm trying to figure this out. I'm trying to figure out what do I need to know anymore, but how much money are you trying to make?
Yo, so I had to do I did a panel where they were talking about just different careers. I always get asked to come to career day for a few different schools, even before the Poet Laureate thing. And so that's the first question. The first question you get is, how much do you make though?
Right.
And I'm like, okay, well, it varies. So listen, I don't know how to answer that.
That is hilarious. I mean, yeah, definitely varies. And it's like you backing up a little bit and talking about how you said it's seasonal, right? Because a lot of times even when you're touring, right? Sometimes it's not, if it's winter, it depends on where you are, in the world. Maybe everybody's not coming out, in the winter. You know what I mean? So it's about budgeting.
Yes.
And knowing, when I made this lump sum of money, when this check comes, I need to budget in order to have money, because it's not a steady, every 2 weeks.
Exactly. And so listen, there are years where I've made maybe $50K, you know what I mean? But there are years where I've made 12. Right. And so you have to learn how to operate in that ebb and flow. You know what I mean? You got to hold on to money when you can. You got to pay bills ahead of time. You got to, you have to map this out, especially when because it does kind of end up kind of getting into, at least for myself, it gets into like a rhythm. Like I know school year, because a lot of times they want to bring me out to do like a bunch of enrichment programs, after school stuff, nonprofit stuff, working with kids or whatever. So I know that business usually picks up for me then. In the summer, sometimes it slows down, but then in the summer, I also start like touring more, like in the spring and the summer, right? So, because I get a little bit more room to move, especially because I have 2 kids of my own, so I have to navigate that around the school year. But that money can kind of, can shift up and down a lot. So you have to, know kind of what that's going to look like for you. Am I going to be able to get grant funding for this project that I really, really want to do? If I don't get the grant funding, then what am I going to do, right? So you kind of have to have a plan A, B, C, and D as you move throughout the year.
You better teach something. Somebody should pay for this. And speaking of which, paying for this should not be free, because this is a master class. So at the bottom, scrolling on your screen right now, all this good advice you can get is Venmo, Cash App, PayPal. You can tip Roscoe right now for all this good advice that you have been getting. That's what I'm saying.
I appreciate it. You see, I'm trying to feed these kids. You've seen one of them, all right?
Exactly.
He eats a lot.
Exactly. So speaking of, you brought up grants, and I'm glad you brought that up, because you were a fellow for poetry. What is it? Poetry Society. What's the name of it?
The American Academy of Poets, or something like that. Sorry.
Hold on. Wait a minute. Hold on. Academy. I'm about to look it up, because you know what?
Academy of American Poets.
There it is. That's it.
There it is. Sorry.
We thought we remembered together. It takes two. It takes two. So yes, I saw. Well, somebody sent me this. Somebody emailed me and was like, "Hey," as I knew nothing about, and I think for real, did Angelo tell me about it? Somebody emailed me.
Angelo's been really great about getting the information out.
Yeah, Yeah, I think so. And then I was like, hey, and then at the time, I think you had just became poet laureate. I was like, hey, get this money. You know what I'm saying? Get this money or whatever, right? So you did, and you
it came at such a great time. I had really great projects that I really wanted to work on, and I'm doing both of them. We did the mural project where we linked up with muralists to add a poetry component to these murals, these beautiful murals that are in the city centered around social justice. And then the other project that I wanted to work on was the school system, the high school poetry slam. So we're getting both of them done. But yeah, it came at a great time. So the Academy of American Poets does a huge grant every year for poet laureates of their city or state. You have to apply. You have to kind of give them like this grant proposal, tell them what you want to do with it, how long you've been poet laureate, all the info, right? Plus submitting some of your work, and then they run through 1 billion applications, and then they pick a handful out. I think they give the award.
10?
Yeah, it's like 10 or 12 people, something like that, end up getting the grant. So I was really, really fortunate or lucky or what have you to have been one of the people selected last year.
Mm-hmm.
So it helped out a lot, helped us get a lot of stuff done, helped us put on like a big poetry slam in the city, helped us do this high school poetry slam, the mural project. And so I was really, really fortunate. And so these grants exist, you know what I mean? It takes some doing. You got to dig deep. But they exist. They exist on a local level. They exist on a national level, and they're always trying to give away money for the arts. But you gotta, have a tight proposal. Make sure you follow these there's always like these parameters, these rules, and you have to follow them to a T, right? Even if it capitalize this, you know what I'm saying? No more than X amount of lines in your proposal. Like you have to follow them to a T, because if anything is out of place, they will toss your application.
You gotta read. So you gotta read. That's what you're saying. Yeah,
you gotta read. You gotta read thoroughly, and then get like another person to look over it. Get a third pair of eyes to look over it. You know what I mean? So that you can make sure that you are following all the rules, so that you don't miss out on the opportunity. So I've been fortunate enough to I've gotten 2 different grants. And since I've really gotten into this world where I'm trying to figure out how to do grant writing and things of that nature, so I was really fortunate to get the Academy of American Poets Poet Laureate Grant Fellowship, and then I got a local grant for like a smaller amount of money. Read the criteria and the instructions. Yes, read them thoroughly.
Somebody said read the criteria and the instructions. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Hey. Shout out to Serena. Let's talk about Poet Laureate for a second, because you are the first ever Poet Laureate of Richmond, Virginia, and you're black.
Yes,
that's what I'm saying.
According to my birth certificate,
do you say black or do you say African American?
I get a lot of pushback from my Hotep friends because I do say black. And they be like, you are the diasporic of Africa motherland, brother. You can't don't reduce yourself to a color. You are not a crayon, sir.
Oh my.
Yeah, I got some friends like that, but it's okay. But I do say black. I like saying black. I think it's very all encompassing. And I say white. So so I say black. So yeah, right. I am black. I am blackity black.
I'm black. It said black on my birth certificate. I'm black, and if I say black, I can say black and proud. So I say black.
Here's one reason why I do say black, right? And I don't like. I personally, this is just a personal thing. I do not like saying African American. So I do understand how the diaspora works, right? I do understand how I look. I am, however, not an African living in America. I have friends who are from Ghana, from South Africa, from Kenya. I got a homeboy who's from Cameroon. I got a homeboy from Liberia, born and raised, who come here. They are Africans living in America. They are African American. I was born in Virginia. I was born in Virginia in Chippenham Hospital. Okay. So, and that doesn't mean I feel like I'm an American. And that's the issue for me.
Mhm.
The issue here for me is that I don't always feel as connected to Africa the way I would like to be.
Right.
I also don't feel connected to America
Mhm.
because history has shown that they don't always want me here.
Right. Exactly.
So I don't feel American. I don't feel African. So black ends up being a better fit also because it really defines a culture that exists in America. When you say that a person acts black, negative or positive, you know what I mean. When we talk about black culture in America, you know what I mean. You know what music I'm talking about. You know what experiences I may be referring to. So that is something that does bring us together for people who look like you and me. You know what I mean? The black experience in America is a shared experience, but a person who is African living in America doesn't always have that experience. And so that's the defining, that's the draw in the sand for me.
I think I'm gonna record this, right? And then when people ask me, I'm gonna just play this clip so I can know. Like when people would ask me about is this black or African American, I can just play this clip. You explain it better than.
I'm a black person living in America, and I'm fine with that. You know what I mean? It doesn't feel negative to me. It doesn't feel like it doesn't have a negative connotation to me because I love black people. I love black culture. I love black music. I love black art. You know what I mean? And it's a culture that's created here, like where we are now. And it doesn't mean that I don't feel connected to Africa at all. I feel like it is connected to Africa, but I'm not connected to it in the way that I would like to be. And you know what I mean? So like it doesn't feel like we're creating African music or we're creating African art. You know what I mean? It feels like something a little different. And so, for that reason, I am black in America.
Black in America. And then that's therefore the first black, black poet laureate of Richmond.
Yeah, first ever.
Yes. So when I became the first black or African American poet laureate of Alexandria, Virginia, I was interviewed by the newspaper when an interviewer asked me, "Do you feel that being the first African American poet laureate, do you feel that you have a different responsibility than those who came before you?" And I said, "No, I have the same responsibility that everybody else got." But now that I had just became poet laureate, right? But now I feel differently about that. Like if you ask me that question now, I would say, yes, I absolutely have a different responsibility for them because I'm the first black person, the first person of color to be represented in this title, right? And I am the person who's showing that you can do it because, Godchild, shout out to my good friend Godchild, the Omen. From the 757 area said, "I hate when people say you're the first black to do something like that's not why you are a poet laureate. But you're not the first black. The black isn't the success, right? Being black isn't the success. It is what you did, right?" And I understand what he was saying. But then when Fairfax County magazine posted it, I got all these comments and inboxes and shares and thousands of people talking about how amazing it was that I was the first black woman to do this certain thing, right? And then being black during this time of everything with the pandemic, Black Lives Matter being, in this time, I felt like what better person to do it, to speak on, everything that's happening black, that's going on, the adversity and everything that's going on now. So, but for you, you're the first ever. Yeah. So I'm gonna ask you that same question. Since you're the first ever, like you're leaving, like what responsibility? Because it's not like having a different responsibility. You're the beginning. You're the first. Like when history comes down, they're gonna be like, and the first person this was the first, right? And so as the first, like what legacy do you plan, or what would you like to leave as the first person of color to do a thing ever?
So you're right. So being the first ever, it's not like I was the first black person to do this, right? There was nobody who had done this in my city prior to me. And so with that, I felt the need to like try to reach across the aisle a little bit because there is kind of a divide in Richmond when it comes to like the poetry scenes, the literary art scene in Richmond. after some failed attempts at that, I don't feel that necessity anymore.
Wow.
I'm a person who I go where I'm welcome, and I don't go where I'm not. And so, and I'm not gonna continue to overextend myself. I'm not gonna overextend myself to do that. So, I am very much, I'm Black every day that I wake up. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm always gonna be that. I know what I look like. I know that's how I'm gonna get treated in certain spaces because of how I look. And so I don't make any apologies for that. And I'm not gonna pretend like that doesn't exist because they led with this. You know what I mean? Just because they led with this doesn't mean that changes my experience in my city. I know what my city has done and what it's capable of and where it's dropped the ball and who it's dropped the ball for. And so I don't make any apologies for bringing attention to that. So, later down the line, when they have other poet laureates who don't look like me, I'm still going to be like my people's first poet laureate. You know what I'm saying? And I'm fine with that. I remember this joke that that Kevin Hart and Chris Rock used to make about being Black famous. Versus, whatever the antithesis of that would be, right? And I used to be like, dang, man, like, is it really like that? Is there Black famous? And then there's I don't know, mainstream or whatever. Like, and it kind of is. And I used to wonder, as an artist, is that what I want for myself? I want to limit myself in that way. And so here's the thing is that my art is going to be whatever my art is. And whoever it reaches is whoever it was supposed to reach. And if that means that that limits me to being for lack of a better term, Black fan, more of an issue with, it's not like I'm not in white spaces. So, you know what I mean? It's not like I'm not, going wherever I can to share my art. But if they're uncomfortable with it, that's fine too. You know what I mean? So that's where I'm at in my career with the people who want to be I'm not discriminating against anyone. Anybody who wants to, share in this journey with me is always welcome. And if they don't, then they don't.
Because humans are stupid.
Humans are.
Speaking of humans are stupid, let's talk about that, right? So the last time you were on here, we talked about Traumedy because you had just released it. And so Traumedy is a poetic and comedic look at human experiences and trauma one endures, right? So I read that straight from the bio. So I just saw Humans Are Stupid.
No, yes, in the audience for the Maryland show.
Yes, for the Maryland show, right? So I was in the audience and I was like, I'm not raising my hand on nothing else he say because he gonna say that I'm stupid, right? So I was happy to see this show.
That's not true, y'all. That's not true. Come to the show. It's not true.
Come to the show. Come to the show. Don't raise your hand though. Just clap. Just clap. I'm giving y'all the inside. This is the inside scoop, right? On Humans Are Stupid. I thought it was a magnificent show. I really did enjoy it. I know you're looking to tour with it, so this is a perfect opportunity for you to know what this is and how you can bring this to your city. So tell people what to expect from Humans Are Stupid and what is it?
All right, so I'll lead with this. If you haven't seen Traumedy, then go watch Traumedy. It's Traumedy. It's on Amazon Prime, Tubi, Hoopla. It's on a bunch of platforms. So go check that out. And so Humans Are Stupid kind of runs in the same vein, right? It is a poetry and comedy special. It is I used to be say it was half poetry, half comedy, but it might have been more comedy this time than it was poetry. But it's half comedy, half poetry. And this one is a look at human behavior, institutions that we have accepted as humans, whether that's in education, in politics, in relationships, and all these kind of made up institutions that we as humans have created, and kind of picking them apart a little bit and seeing why some of these things are ridiculous or how we behave ridiculously in those institutions. So it's fun, it's thought provoking, it's really silly, but it's also very serious. And so it really unpacks a lot of who we are as a society, and kind of looks at some of the contradictions and hypocrisies within that.
Definitely, definitely fun. I had a ball. I had a ball.
It's a fun show.
Yes, it's a fun show. So definitely, you have it booked somewhere already, like for the next thing, or?
So we are working on bringing it to DC, possibly the Woolly Mammoth Theater.
Oh, nice.
Like we're looking at. So fingers crossed that all goes well. Then we'll be in Knoxville in late August, and then I'll be in Dallas a couple times this year, and then we're looking at bringing it down south to like Charlotte. So we'll see how that looks.
Nice. Well, if it's in DC, it'll be close to me, and then I'll come back again, and because I'll know what's gonna happen. So
it's good.
Definitely. It says a lot if I'm gonna spend my money a second time to see it again. So
Max, yeah, especially because you know me. You'd be like, "Oh, I've seen that show already." Like,
yeah, I know it. I know what is about to happen. Yes, but I'm like that about poetry. Like I like to hear those same pieces. You know what I'm saying? I like to hear them, and sometimes when I hear it, it's different. I hear different things than I heard,
right.
In the beginning. And I know sometimes poets don't like to do the same. They go, I don't want to do that poem over and over, but it's like a song. I realize that poetry is like a song, basically, and people like to hear it. They like to hear it again, and maybe they have a friend like, this is the poem I told you about, right? So yeah, I see somebody saying,
Gary was like, bring it to Atlanta. Help me bring it to Atlanta.
Bring it to Atlanta, dude. To Atlanta. Yes, you bring it to Atlanta. I'll go to Atlanta so I can see it. So,
yes.
And then I'll go see Jerry, but she's not gonna kill me in the gym. I'm trying to say, I'm not gonna be dead in the gym. So when people ask you, what do you do for a living? What do you say?
Oh, that's a good question. If I'm being really vague because I don't like know the people who I think they're looking to pick me apart, then I'll just say I'm self-employed. But if people know, if I feel like, I'm dealing with maybe other artists or, people who are, a little more like understanding, or if I feel like explaining it depends on how I feel. Then I'll tell them I'm a full-time artist. I'm a spoken word artist. I'll lead with, I'm the poet laureate for the city. I pick and choose what title I use kind of at the time. Sometimes I don't like saying just poet because they don't really know what that means. And then sometimes I don't like saying spoken word artist because people kind of undervalue what that means. Mm-hmm. So I pick and choose, but I usually tell people I'm a full-time artist.
When you say I'm the poet laureate of Richmond, Virginia, and they said, "Oh, what's the poet laureate?" What do you say?
Yep, that's usually the reaction I get.
What is that?
Like, oh, what's that?
What does it mean? Because
I told my mama, I was so proud when I got poet laureate, and I called and told my mama, and she was like, "I'm so proud of you. What is that?"
Right. Exactly. What does that mean? Yeah, I just tell people, I say it's like being the mayor of poetry for the city or the state. That's what I tell everybody. Like, what a mayor does. Like, I do that for poetry.
I got introduced as the mayor of poetry at an event.
Wow.
He was like,
you guys will get the key to the city then.
Yeah, he was like, he's kind of like the mayor of poetry in Richmond. So here's Roscoe. And I was like, okay.
Wow. How do I follow that? Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the platform, okay? Because we talked a little bit about the poet. But before I talk about the platform, let me ask you one other question. What are you doing right now? Because you know in school how they give you this, what would you say to your younger self thing, right? Everybody says, what would you say to your younger self? So I'm going to say, what are you doing right now that your older self is going to thank you for?
What am I doing right now that my older self is going to
thank you for?
Thank me for?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man. What am I doing right now that my older self is going to thank me for? I am investing my money. I recently got into stocks, and so I'm still learning as I go, but I am putting away. I'm squirreling away money. That's one thing that I know I'm going to thank myself for later. Just giving myself a little cushion. And then I am building relationships in a different way than I was earlier in my career. Mm-hmm. I have recently really understood the value of networking. And I know poets are going to hate me for this. And so there are moments where I've kind of gotten paid in exposure. even in this part of my career, right? But it's very much chess. All right. So it's like in chess, you got to think 3 moves ahead, right? So even if that move isn't the move that's going to get you closer to the king, you know what I mean? You're doing it in order to set other things up. So like I took some lower offers from colleges because I knew it was going to set me up for something larger later, to do like larger projects with them. I teamed up with an organization called Partner in the Arts. They work through University of Richmond. I had taken on this responsibility of being a part of a cohort to teach teachers how to use different forms of art in their classroom.
Nice. Okay.
It didn't pay a whole lot. It did pay, but it didn't pay a whole lot. But from that, one, they would bring me back every year, sometimes twice a year, to do the same thing. They brought me kind of in as their kind of artist in residence, kind of thing. And then it eventually like led to other projects, you know what I mean? So like it linked me up with PBS, it linked me up with, other things. And so through those networks, I was able to get a little further along, you know what I mean? So networking is huge. It's a part of being a self-employed person, right? You're like yourself. If you're a full-time artist, you are an entrepreneur. And if you're an entrepreneur, networking and building relationships and linking up with other entrepreneurs, other businesses, is going to be imperative to your career. So from there, it's led me to like advertising work. It's led me to like other educational things. It's led me to being in plays and things of that nature. I had to build those relationships though. And then I had to present myself in a different way. You know what I mean? Like there is a professionalism that does have to happen, even if you're an artist. And so listen, when I show up to places, I still keep the hat with all the buttons on it. You're still going to see me in like in a fly shirt, lots of colors. You know what I mean? Like I'm definitely myself everywhere that I go, but I carry myself in a professional manner. They know I am an artist, but I am also a business person. This is how I make my living. And so when you come into that, these conversations, these talks, you sitting at the table with all these other big wigs, like they know immediately this is who I am and this is what I'm worth. And so even if things don't pan out immediately, they know that when they come back to me, look, this is what I need.
That's good advice. More good advice on this master class.
Yeah, build those long-term relationships. Doing one show at a school is cool, but if you can build a relationship where you're bringing you back every year, they're having you do workshops, they're having you do panel discussions, and they're having you do all these other things. You know what I mean? Like that's the relationships you want, because that does create more consistent streams of income. You see what I'm saying? Like, so it takes some doing, it takes a lot of, rubbing elbows and talking to some people, but it pays off in the long run.
Definitely. That's good advice. Y'all better take that. Are you better read or heard?
Heard. I definitely prefer to be heard. Not that I haven't produced some great work that is read. I've been published well over a dozen times in several different magazines and journals and anthologies. I've written 3 books. I published 3 books. I'm working on a 4th. I love my written work, but I love being on the stage. And I think you get a different feel for my work when I'm on stage.
Nice. Tell us 4 artists that are on your playlist.
4 artists that are on my playlist. And then you also asked like what my influences were. So I'll kind of combine. Okay. I'll kind of combine that. So I know a lot of people think that I listen to a lot of poetry or I read a lot of poetry, and I really don't. I always feel like I'm disappointing people when I say that, but I don't. I don't listen to a whole lot of poetry. I like to read poetry. I do like to read a lot of poetry, but I don't listen to a lot of poets. Sorry, poets. So I listen to a lot of Prince. Growing up, it was a lot of like CeeLo and Outkast.
Nice. I love Outkast.
Yeah, and then probably like a lot of when I think about like stuff that like heavily influenced me, it was probably like Heavy D or something like that. That was like the first hip hop artist I ever saw or have ever heard of. So like that was like wildly, like I know that's like a weird list considering like what I do now. And then nowadays, it's still a lot of Prince. It's like a lot of Prince. and then I'm probably listening to like stuff that people don't like would never assume I would listen to. So I listen to a lot of Chris Stapleton, who's a country singer, and then great storytelling. I know people talk trash about country, but like if you want really good storytelling, go listen to some country music. It is really good. There's some really good writing in country music. Anyway, I listen to a lot of Chris Stapleton, and then lastly, I listen to a lot of 2 Chainz.
2 Chainz?
2 Chainz. I love 2 Chainz. I know, like it's like, oh, ignorant trap rapper, but like I love 2 Chainz.
Nothing surprised me until you said 2 Chainz. 2 Chainz surprises me. Yeah.
Yeah, I listen. So shouts out to 2 Chainz. Titty Boy was his original rap name. I just want people to know that.
What?
Just because it's interesting.
I did not know that. I did not know that. Wow. Okay. Yes. I'm not surprised by Chris Stapleton at all. Man, you threw me. I forgot. Okay, I forgot what I was gonna say.
I'm still from the South with an F. You know what I'm saying? I'm still from the South.
From the South, exactly.
So there's gotta be a little trap rap in my playlist.
Yes, let's shout out the wife, right? Let's shout out the wife.
Oh yeah, my wife is amazing.
Shout out to your amazing wife. And how has being married, or has it changed the way you maneuver in poetry?
I will personally say, and it may not be this way for everybody, but it made life easier. It made life a lot easier. I was a full-time artist right around the time I met my wife. I was kind of going back and forth because that was about 2016, 2015. Mm-hmm. So like I was, my main source of income was art, but I was still working like a regular job, temp jobs off and on, that kind of thing to make up for the difference, right? Mm-hmm. So I was doing that. I was transitioning into a full-time artist and wasn't doing much of anything else outside of working the occasional part-time job, and then or doing like a few like kind of educational things, you know, small programs, whatever. But then we got together, and so you know we've been married now for 6 years. Having the dual income always helps. You know, when I had my first kid, it was just me and her. You know what I mean? I've had full custody of my daughter since she's like 3, 4, something like that. And so she would go on the road with me. She would be at all the shows, all the open mics, school nights, all of it. She was always, if you saw me, you probably saw her. And then after getting married, you know what I mean? Like if I had a show, I can be like, hey, babe, you know, I got to be on the road from this time to this time, or I got to go here. And so she's like, she's an accountant. She's got the steady gig. She's at home. So, you know, we're able to kind of trade off in that way now. So it made life a little easier, you know what I mean? And she's just in general a pleasure to be around. So helps me de-stress.
I agree.
She's a sweetheart. She's super supportive. I
that
told
helps a lot.
It does. So I told past, you know, exes and past lovers, I'm like, don't ever make me choose.
Right.
Don't you ever make me choose between you and poetry, because you will lose every time.
Right. But it's good to be with somebody who has an appreciation, not just love you in the art. Like she genuinely has an appreciation for art. You know what I'm saying? And it's good. So like she understands it.
Yeah,
so
yeah. Like she respects me as a person and she respects me as an artist. Mm-hmm. And that means the world.
But she likes it. That's a different thing. Like she actually likes the art. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it doesn't have to be a
and it's very critical. She's just as critical as I am. We'll be at a show and she'll hear a poem. She'll be like, that wasn't that good. I don't think that was that good.
No.
Yeah.
That is hilarious.
She's hilarious. Real, yo. No holds barred. She'll lean over and she's like, that poem was pretty good. You may not win this slam this time, because that poem was good. I don't know. I mean, I love your work, baby. And you did a really good job. But that poem was good. That poem was good. God dang. All right. Okay, thanks. Good to know.
Hilarious. That's hilarious. I'm gonna thanks for telling me. I'm gonna sit by her the next time I'm at the slam, so I can get to lean in. So I can know what's happening. Yes. Don't make her a judge, or do make her a judge.
Right. Make her a judge. I'm trying to tell you, she'll give you a real score.
That's what I'm saying. Shout out to the wife. Okay. So let's talk about the platforms. Like I know you do, because we were talking about this briefly when I saw you recently at Let the Laureates Tell It in Charlotte. Woo woo! Shout out to Blues for bringing all the poet laureates together, all the black ones. So not all of them, but 8 of them, the black ones together. Shout out to Mrs. on that. So we were talking about like mental health as a platform. Like, why that of all things? Like, that's definitely one of your platforms. We talk about mental health, and as a black man, like, why choose that? Why choose to talk about this?
So just like I was saying earlier, poetry gave me a space to be more vulnerable in a way that rap music didn't at the time. Not that there isn't vulnerability in rap music, but like mainstream, you know, what we know of rap music, right? We don't always get the type of vulnerability that we may want from artists or could get from artists. But poetry was different. Poetry allowed me to be as vulnerable as I wanted to be without any shame, without any restrictions. And it had been, poetry started out, poetry in its earliest, iterations in my life started out as a healing process for me. When I really, really got into poetry, it was because I was trying to get these feelings out that I couldn't really explain any other way. And I'm very transparent. I still deal with depression and bipolar disorder. It's an ongoing battle. And in my youth, struggled heavily with suicide and suicide ideation. My first suicide attempt was at 13. I tried to swallow a bunch of pills. I thought that was gonna do it. I just ended up with a really bad stomach ache and threw up the entire night. So that's, if you want to know how that ended. So I was 13, and I was just really, really depressed. Life was really, really tough, or at least I felt like life was tough at the time. And I wanted to end it, and there were several other attempts, after that, all the way up until I was about 19 years old when I found out that I was going to be a father, and that kind of changed the game for me a little bit. So, but it's still an ongoing struggle, and so, but poetry became this outlet for me, and which is why I love talking about poetry as an act of resilience, because this is where I found resilience. This is where I found my triumphant moments, using poetry to unpack all the dark and scary things that I was feeling, all the horrible tragedies and the trauma I was going through. I was able to unpack those things and then be like, well, I'm still here, right? I'm still here to tell my story. And I'm really happy about that. And so I want to see that more in writing. I want to see that more in people's story, because they are here. And let's talk about why you're still here. So when I'm doing a lot of these projects with kids, centered around creative writing, and how we use that as a therapeutic process, or how we use that to unpack trauma. Yeah, let's talk about all the dark and scary things. It's okay. Tell me you thought about suicide. Tell me you're struggling with depression. Tell me that your mania has you going all over the place. You know what I mean? Tell me all the things. But we're gonna talk about where this silver lining is. We're gonna talk about how you're gonna be resilient, how you have been resilient, where you are triumphant. That is the important part. So mental health is huge for me. It's something that is a large part of my identity. You know what I mean? I'm still struggling with these things, and I want to be really transparent about how I'm struggling with these things, especially for somebody who looks like me, because men in general never really talk about what they're feeling, right? And how these things are affecting them long term. And then especially in communities of color, we're always taught to like suck it up, deal with it, brush it off, go pray about it. You know what I mean? And it's like, you can't just, not to take away from people's like faith, but you also can't be that dismissive. Don't be dismissive about it. So it's like, we have to have these conversations. We have to like kind of dig into where these things are happening, why these things are happening, so that we can find a way to mitigate that, or a way to end it entirely. People don't understand. People like it. The suicide rate for Black youth has skyrocketed over the last 10 to 15 years, right? And it's because these kids are dealing with a ton of emotions that adults usually brush off and don't listen to, don't give any weight to, things of that nature. And so these kids are left to unpack it all on their own, right? And we're not only are we in the digital era, but we are also in the era of like designer drugs. You know what I mean? Pills is what it is now. They're everywhere. They're so easy to access. And when a kid hits that spike, it's nothing for them to get their hands on something that can be really detrimental to them. right? But that starts here, and we have to like be very hands-on when it comes to like, how do we help these kids find resilience? How do we help them find these triumphant moments? How do we get them the help that they need? How do we get them therapy? How do we get them therapeutic processes? How do we get them healthy coping mechanisms so that they can start to navigate this world on their own, in a way that is productive for them, and how they can be productive members in society.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I was reading the comments. Why Roscoe? On your resume it says Douglas Powell / Roscoe Burnems. Why slash? What's that mean? What's that part? Because now we know that Roscoe Burnems is not your birth name.
Right.
Now that we know, because a lot of people don't know. Now that we know that, why slash? And why Roscoe Burnems? Why Roscoe Burnems?
So I'll actually start with the more lighthearted answer, and then I'll give the more serious, the deeper kind of thing. So people couldn't make out checks to Roscoe. Like, listen, when you write these checks, I need you to put Douglas Powell on these checks, okay? I say that, but I have definitely deposited checks that said Roscoe Burnems on it, and my bank understands. Shouts out to Bank of America, at least the branch for me, because they understand that some of these checks don't say Roscoe. But I wanted people to, I was publishing more, and I, using Roscoe was cool, but I wanted people to know that, the person, this is who I am. This is what my actual name is. And so there was a brief moment where I tried to use Douglas Powell, and I wasn't using Roscoe at all. And nobody would let me do it. I had been Roscoe for too long, and they were like, I don't know who this Douglas guy is, but coming to the stage is Roscoe Burnems. Okay. So I made the conscious effort to start using both and putting the slash there.
Gotcha.
And then the other part of that is that, as my mother, my mom has always been really supportive of my journey as an artist. She didn't understand it, but she was supportive of it. And she used to make this joke. She was like, I don't know who is Roscoe. And so she would come out to shows sometimes, and they would be like, oh, your son Roscoe's so good. Oh, you're his mom. Oh, it's so a pleasure to meet you. She's like, Douglas. I am Douglas's mom. Yes.
Okay.
So she never really got used to it. She would do it. But towards her later years, she would say Roscoe when she was out somewhere, and she was like, "Oh, my son's Roscoe Burnems. Have you ever heard of him?" And so she kind of accepted it after a while. But like, my mom passed recently. My mom passed back in December, and as she grew older and grew sicker, like my mother named me Douglas. Right, that was a name that meant something to her. Mm-hmm. For whatever reason, it meant something to her. Right, and sometimes I felt weird about coming up with this whole new person that was very separate from that. And so, I love Roscoe. Like I still use the stage name, but like my mother, the way I always tell people when I come to stage is my mother named me Douglas. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of a way of me just being like, I appreciate her. And the identity that I started with is still a large part of who I am, because she's a large part of who I am. So I want people to know that Rosa May named me Douglas. And so I am Douglas first. I am Douglas Powell first. Roscoe Burnems second.
And definitely and daddy, husband, and all that.
Yes.
Yes. Wow. Okay. What are you most afraid of?
Spiders. Next question.
Spiders?
No, I was just joking.
I was like, I kill some spiders.
No, I'm not. Oh man, biggest fear. My biggest fear is being forgotten.
Wow, that is mine too. Mine is not being. I always say not to be remembered.
Right.
Which is kind of the same. Kinda. I'm
always worried that because I feel like I always want to leave something that's going to live longer than I am. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So I'm always worried that it's never enough. That once I go, then that's it. Then the Roscoe Burnems doesn't exist anymore, and so none of the work that I've done or none of the art that I've created will live on past that. So right. I'm always worried about that.
What are you most proud of?
I don't look, man. I guess my kids are asleep. I'm supposed to say my kids, but, but I'm supposed to say my kids, but whatever. You know what I mean?
They're not this week. So let me tell you something else.
I'm actually really proud of the projects that I have been creating over the last couple of years. I'm very proud of Traumedy. It's in the theme of first. Nobody had done this. Nobody had done this type of poetry, one-man show, theatrical production, and put it on a streaming platform for the world to see. You know what I mean? Nobody had done that. Mm-hmm. And so I take a lot of pride in that. When it dropped, it was very polarizing. People were like, oh, whatever. I mean, he ain't special just because he got it put on Amazon Prime. And then some people were like, yo, this is a game changer. Poets didn't even know they could do that.
They could do it. Exactly.
Yeah. Poets didn't even know they could do that. And then since then, and some people felt weird about telling me, or they felt like they shouldn't have told me at all because they thought I was going to be like hating or whatever. But they're like, oh, I'm working on my own special. Oh, I'm working on my own thing that we're going to put on another platform. Or I'm working on my own one-man show or whatever. And I love it. I don't ever want people to think that I did this thing and now I have the market on poetry specials, right? That's not the case. Do all the things.
Right.
Do all of it. I want to see poetry on TV. I want to see poetry on the radio. I want to hear poetry. I want to hear poetry on the radio. Mm-hmm. I want to see poetry in all these different spaces. It doesn't just have to be YouTube. It doesn't just have to be button poetry or right about now. Do your own show. Put it somewhere. Share it with the world. Like, find ways to put poetry in spaces that have never, where it's never been before. Break down all these things. What I love most about poetry is that it doesn't have to be put in a box. You know what I mean? Poetry works in commercials. Poetry works on music. Poetry works on TV. Poetry works in movies. Poetry works in plays. Poetry works in all these spaces. You know what I mean? So put it in all the spaces. You know what I mean? I got a project coming up recently. I got a project coming up later this year with the Chamber Music Society of Virginia. And there was a poem that they really liked. They wanted to turn it into a classical composition. So they're working on kind of like, they teamed up with a kid who recently graduated, who's got all these scholarships for music and all that kind of stuff. He's a violinist by trade, but he does a bunch of other stuff. And so he was like, well, give me a poem and I'll listen to it or I'll read it and I'll see how it inspires me and I'll come up with something to it. And then sometime in May or June, I don't remember, but sometime later this year, we're going to do an event together where I'm going to spit the poem while they play the composition. And, but the composition is inspired by the poem. So that's a space where poetry has never been for them. You know what I mean? Like it never existed there before. But now we're crossing these genres, and now I want to do that as much as possible. That's how the mural project came about. Like, let's put poems to these murals, and then have people scan it so they can see the poem and look at the mural and see how these things correlate. Mm-hmm. Like, nobody had done that before in Richmond. Like, let's do that. Let's find a way to get poetry in all these spaces because it can exist in all these spaces.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Somebody said, you better inspire people, Roscoe, in the comments. Yes. So my mom is the person when something happens, right? My mom is the first person I call to say, Mama, guess what? She's my before I tell anybody else, she's the person who I call first to say this happens, right? Then I call 13. He my husband. I call 13 after that.
Call him Mama first.
Oh, Mama first. Mama first. And then I call 13. So who is the person or who are your people that you call and say, this is about to happen or this happened? Shout out your people.
All right. So it normally goes in this order. And and just know that if I'm saying your name, then you are in a very, very tight community because I don't have a ton of close people. I know a lot of people, but I'm not close to a lot of people. Right. So when I get good news, it normally goes in this order. Delesse, who's my little sister, and then Nikki, who is my big sister, and then And then I will say this flips sometimes. So wait. So it goes Deleste, and it goes Nikki, and then it goes my wife, Crystal. Shouts out to my wife. Sometimes she is third to no, but that's okay. She understands. So it goes my sisters, and then my wife, and then it flips sometimes. But it either goes KaNikki then Angelique, or Angelique then KaNikki. I think I need to put y'all in a group chat together. So y'all can know.
You should just put us on the same thing and just call us both together and be like, hey, let me tell you. Yes. Shout out to Angelique Palmer.
I said my wife is third on the list, and then my wife comes out of the room to give me the side eye.
Yes. Do that side eye. Do the side eye.
She knows how close I am to my sisters. So like she knows.
She knows, yes. But I mean, hey, she gets all the glory regardless of the fact or whatever it is. She's in the house with you. So whatever happens from that, she gets that all. So
right. And she gets all the benefits of it. If I get paid, then she's getting money too.
Right. Yes. Shout out to that. Okay, so I'm gonna ask you to close with one piece, and then I already see we got a question in the comment, in some comments. So if anybody else has any questions, this is a perfect time for you to like do those things. So I'm gonna ask you to read those. I'm still laughing at the comments. I'm asking you to do one last piece, and then I'll bring all my co-hostesses back because they probably have questions too. And I see one that somebody already typed. The screen belongs to you.
I was gonna try to read some new work, but the poem I wanted to read is a little heavy, so I won't read that. I'll read something a little up, since we're on this nice little upswing here. My son flutters through the house, arms out in no direction, like a butterfly playing tag with his own shadow. One Halloween, a butterfly is what he asked to be, unprompted. He knows nothing about what society associates with fancy colors and flutter. He just loves butterflies. I'm not sure if you know how hard it is to find a boy butterfly costume, but there ain't one. They are all meant for girls. They are all flowy dresses and monarch gowns. Fairies turn multicolored insect, but we bought one because my baby wanted one. And so there he was, all orange, black, and satin, frilly bottom, wingspan, bright as a summer. My son was 3 at the time. Doesn't know what a dress is. Never addresses it as a dress when he sees it. Just imagines himself draped royally and free from his chrysalis. And now when I was a child, we couldn't be butterflies. At best, you could be a wasp. You could sting or be stung, but never chrysalis. A chrysalis hardens and then births a rainbow. A chrysalis allows what's inside to become new. Now I was taught that boys don't rainbow. Boys could scab. Scabs harden and then birth a scar. Ironic, because boys make it out of their childhood but are often scarred by it. You know, he was so fascinated with butterflies that we learned a few things, like how some wings are poisonous. And ain't that a metaphor for a boy born into toxic, carrying it on his body, on his back, dangerous when he just wants to be beautiful, wants to stop and smell the roses. My son always stops mid-stride to admire a flower or the sky or the beauty and just being alive. He is a kaleidoscope of emotions and always breaking free. And that's what scares me most, because butterflies are so easy to break. I learned that when you touch a butterfly's wings, it kills a million tiny scales. And this is when a monarch loses his color. This is when a boy forgets he's allowed to be beautiful. But if you stay perfectly still, well, then a butterfly will rest on you. So now I am trying to soften my primitive hands so that he lives like a butterfly and doesn't die like a man. Instead, I admire him in his butterfly costume as he twirls and boasts and still plays with all the trucks and trains and little boy things. And sometimes he will rest his head on my palm as if to tell me, thank you for giving me wings. And all of this happens while I'm in my own shell, learning from him how to be free. Thanks, y'all. Sherry is saying something, but I don't know what it is because she's muted.
The storytelling is amazing.
Oh, thanks.
That's what I was saying. The storytelling. I think everybody's muted.
Oh, okay.
Beautiful.
Sorry, my computer was doing the most when I did not need it to. I was just saying I so love that poem. I love that. I love the I love everything about it. That's just the words. I just love everything about it.
And that it's a true story. That's the best thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is a true story. We did dress up like he dressed up like a butterfly. He was 3 years old. It was his first Halloween. He wanted to be a butterfly, so he was going to be a butterfly. And I was actually really, really nervous because I was worried that people were going to say things about him being dressed up as a butterfly. I didn't really care if he wants to be a butterfly, but I was worried that people were going to say things, right? And so I made the joke with my wife, and I was like, I'm going to dress up like a boxer, and I'm going to say I'm a bop anybody who think they're gonna talk about my kid. And so she was like, you probably shouldn't do that because that's a felony. And so I was like, okay, well, maybe we'll try something different. So then we all dressed up as butterflies that year in solidarity. And also because nobody wants to get their ass kicked by a man in a butterfly costume. So I was like, I was prepared. Nobody was gonna say nothing to me.
I love it. I did have one question.
What's up?
It kind of going back to something you were saying about being poet laureate and the tours and the newer venues that you have found yourself in. Do you find yourself altering your set based on the makeup of the audience, the racial makeup of the audience?
Oh no, never. I will never adjust my set because there's a bunch of white people in the audience. No. Not never.
I was just throwing out there.
Wow.
Sometimes I will adjust my set. And so like with the poet laureate, with the Let the Laureates Tell It event in Charlotte, I adjusted my set because I didn't want to sound like other artists. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to like if for example, this actually didn't happen at the Let the Laureates Tell It, but if a lot of sets are going to be like blackity black all night, I don't want to be another blackity black poet, right? I want to find a way to stand out. So then I might shift my set then, you know what I mean? Maybe I'll do more, more storytelling, right? Or more personal pieces, more things about fatherhood. Because I feel like that's a lane where not a lot of people are going to go, at least not in the way that I'm going to do it. So it makes me stand out as an artist, but I will never adjust my set for a white audience.
Miss Cayenne, I see you smiling. You got the I'm about to ask a question. Look on your face.
No, I've just been absorbing this wonderful conversation and Roscoe, I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you heretofore. So I've been sitting in this masterclass, taking little notes and things like that. So I've been smiling and nodding my head because I'm learning and I'm gleaning. I definitely have enjoyed the conversation. I do have a question, though. You're right, KaNikki. I do have a question. So I'm hoping I can phrase the question correctly. I was reflecting on part of the conversation that you and KaNikki were having around Black versus African American, and you indicated, if I remember what you said as closely as possible, you talked about not necessarily feeling as connected to Africa as you would like. That's the phrase that I heard you say, and
right.
Yet also understanding that I'm born in America, but not necessarily, but clearly understanding that America has not always wanted you here or us here. So the visual that created for me is kind of like a betwixt place. Being Black in America felt like, based on that description for me, my visual was this betwixt place, this in-between place of being Black in America. So my question is, are you satisfied or content with that in-between place, or is there a desire or in your mind a need to become more connected to either side of that, whether being an American or being more connected to Africa? Is there a need?
I've recently gotten my passport because I want to travel, and the first, I have never been outside of the country, and so one of the first places that I really want to travel to is Ghana first. And then I got some homies who are from other parts of West Africa. So what we're going to try to do eventually is try to sync up our schedules so that we can go and they can kind of show me what I've been missing all these years. Yeah. And so, but to answer the question, I feel like it's made me kind of lean into what it means to be Black in America, right? What is Black culture? What is Black art? What is Black fashion? What is Black language, right? Because we kind of speak our own language. It's a culture in America, which is why I don't have a problem saying like I'm a Black American, right? Like at best I'm a Black American, right? Even though I don't really feel like an American in the truest sense of the word, but it's definitely made me lean in and appreciate Black culture more than I think I may have in the past. Like I feel like I may have just kind of taken it for granted sometimes. You know what I mean? Like about what we've built here, because what we built here is so different than anywhere else, and it's very true to us. And so I feel like I've leaned more into that. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's where I found a home.
Yeah, no, I get that. I encourage you to definitely and let me know when you go to Ghana. My father is Ghanaian and my mother is Black. So I was cracking up over here because I was like, my experiences, my little whatever, a little different. I'm always going around. I'm a true African American because my father's Black. You know, I go into this whole thing, but
Yes.
but being that is just what it was. I didn't get connected until much as an adult going to visit and becoming more educated, and even now still having a lot to learn and wanting to connect with my craft in another country. That's a whole different scope for me. So I was curious about that for you. So thank you for shining some light on that.
Thank you.
There's a question in the comments, Roscoe. What is your favorite poem you wrote from a writing prompt or writing exercise?
Oh man. Well, I'll say that the poem I read earlier, the Whole Foods poem, was technically it was the result of a prompt. We had to come up with poems centered around like environmental justice, food justice, things of that nature. And so I had never done anything in that realm before. Didn't even really know how to tackle it. And it caused me to do a lot of research. Like I knew food deserts existed. I understood, you know, I mean, I lived in the projects for a little bit, in addition to growing up on a farm. And so you actually with that type of history, you get to see like how very different access looks like. You know what I mean? It's particularly because I grew up in a place where you could grow everything. You know what I mean? Versus living in a place where organic food, healthier food is scarce, or so far away from you, you know what I mean, that it's almost inaccessible. So that definitely, I mean, I feel like that was the result of a prompt as well. I'm trying to think of a prompt that I remember getting, or a writing exercise that I remember getting that like that caused like that birthed a poem that I really, really enjoyed. And one of those things where I'm sure I could list a bunch, but now I'm drawing a blank.
I saw someone ask, but where? It was one of us. But where did the name Roscoe come from?
All right. So Roscoe was a nickname. It was like an inside joke between me and this girl who I really liked, who friend zoned me. And then it just became this inside joke. And so she started calling me Roscoe, and then it just stuck. Like at school, it just stuck. And so I held on to it when I was still like wanting to be like a rapper or whatever. And I threw Burnems at the end because I thought it sounded cool, but it didn't. But then fast forward all these years later, I couldn't get rid of it. So I was here now. but yeah, so I wish I had like a really cool, story for that. But no, it was this girl I liked said Roscoe. And I was like, you can call me Roscoe, like, because I'm stupid. And I didn't care. I just wanted her to like me. And
wow.
That's what
Wow.
She's so whack now though too. Let me tell you. So she ran into a friend and she was like, "Oh yeah." No, she came to this to go to all the time. And then she was talking to a friend of mine or whatever. At any rate, she was like, "Oh yeah, like we he's a friend of mine. We've known each other since high school. Mind you, we ain't seen each other since high school either. But we've been friends since high school, and I'm the reason he's got the name Roscoe." And I'm like, okay, you holding that for that.
Okay.
Like,
Ooh.
I've become so much more
Oh,
since
wow.
then. Like, for sure. What? It's
Why?
fine. You can.
Why?
Why even drop that? I literally haven't seen her since like my college years at best. Like, we haven't seen each other. I'm 30. I'm about to be 36 soon. We have not seen each other in like 15 years. Like, but you're like holding on. You're like going to places and being like, oh yeah, I gave him that name. Da 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 da. Like, all right, whatever.
I need to be a part of your success. That's what that is.
Exactly. That's what it is.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Well, Girl Genius, I don't know if you have any questions before.
Not a question, and I'm not even going to drop the last question because we normally have the same last question, and you've answered this, and you gave us some really good feedback on the last one too. I think I'm looking at my notes. I just want to go back and kind of reemphasize the point you were making earlier about networking.
Yes.
We had a discussion about this. It's networking, relationship building, and professionalism. Those things right
It's
there.
huge.
Freaking
It's huge. I mean, if you want to. My bad. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I'm going to say we've had other guests on this show like hit that nail on the head.
Mhm.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, it's huge.
It's a big deal.
Yeah,
You
if
never
you want
know.
to turn this into a career, if you're in any if you're in any career, particularly if you're a self-employed, you're entrepreneur, whatever. Like those are three staples that you're going to need in all of your interactions, especially as an artist, where like your reputation is everything and your following is everything. So if you have to be professional in these spaces. Networking and building these long-term relationships are going to be huge to your success. So watch how you treat people.
We just had this discussion. We touched on this a little bit yesterday. We did. We were hosting an open mic, and I said we were having a discussion about 2 degrees of separation. Like everybody, especially in this business, knows everybody on some level.
And the other thing is that also something that Roscoe and I were touching on in our pre-show conversation, which we probably should have recorded for the Patreon, it was about networking and not knowing who is ever in your audience, because you also touched on make sure you know about local funding. We did an event last night and there was somebody in the audience was like, I got money.
Mm-hmm.
I just need you to figure out how to come and get it.
Nice.
Right.
Yeah. So definitely don't overlook your local funders. It may not be the large dollar amounts, I'm just going to use that sentence, that you may be looking for, but that seed money could grow into being something else.
Right.
And don't be afraid to extra followers as well. I mean, you'd be surprised. I put up posts and was like, hey, I'm trying to fund something and I got cash apps. So you never know.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah.
The little amounts will put you where you need to be to get the big ones.
Definitely. Yeah.
Always.
Every single time.
And and part of networking is guarding your reputation. I've talked about this before, because that will put you in a room that you don't even know that your name is in.
Right.
Until you get that email or until you get that phone call.
Definitely. Okay, hold on. I'm trying to make sure we didn't skip anybody, because people be like, they didn't ask my question.
Any last questions in the chat? Now is your time.
Okay, well, since you basically already answered the last question that we asked, so I'll make this the last question. How can people support you other than financially? How can people support you? And then tell us how we can support you financially.
All right, how can people support me? Go watch the show. Traumedy is streaming. And then bigger than just watching the show, go tell somebody else to watch it. Go share it. Go tell somebody else that you've seen it. That helps the numbers, and that helps me. It helps my career. You can support me. You can support me by supporting your local youth, and being being a good support system for your local youth as well, right? Like when we talk about mental health, one thing that helps with that is having a positive, responsible support system. So go be a positive influence, go be a responsible adult, and aid in some youth's mental health, be an outlet for them.
Perfect.
And financially, how can we support you?
Yes, give me money, please. You'll see it at the bottom here on this ticker, but if it's Cash App, then it's the cash tag, which is the $, and then it's DP because I'm Douglas Powell, RB because I'm Roscoe Burnems, and that's 2 names, so it's 2. So DPRB2.
Fantastic.
Thank
And
you.
you don't have to do it today. You can come back on payday.
Right. And we were okay with that.
Trust me, I will take money whenever you want to give it to me.
Right.
I'm just saying.
And before we close out, if you cannot financially support Keep the Mic On directly, if you can, let me say it backwards. Let me say it this way. If you can, ours is Keep the Mic On at Cash App. That is where all the money goes. If you can't support us financially, follow and like and leave a comment under this video under YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Subscribe, like, because the closer we get to that 1,000 people and those so many hours, we can try to collect a couple of dollars from YouTube.
Right.
So please, like and subscribe on YouTube, like and subscribe on Facebook. We'd appreciate it.
Like and subscribe because you want to keep watching the show.
Right.
Because every week, and go back and watch some of our older videos.
Yes.
We have had some fantastic conversations. We started with StreamYard last May, and have been in all of our shows since, I believe, Lady Breon from last May is still live on the Facebook feed. So definitely go watch the Facebook feed. We keep saying it. One of these days, we are going to start putting up some of our other archive shows from our first and second year. It's just a lot of work that nobody.
I have them. They're stored. There's a lot of them, and it takes a while to upload them.
It takes a while. So, but stay with us. Next week is Let's Talk About the.
It's a book
and Girl
it's a
Genius.
Book with some other things. It's a book and some other things, and you already know who I have next week.
I know.
I don't know.
People.
No one knows. No one knows who's with.
Okay.
Yes.
My guest next week is Alex the Great.
Alex
Yes.
the Great.
Yes, Alex.
I have Alex the Great next week.
Cannot wait. So
Awesome.
everyone.
So I am excited to have that conversation. Yay!
Yes.
Yay! All the things.
So let's first, as a team, let's give a round of applause to Roscoe Burnems and thank him for being here with us this evening.
Thank you, Douglas Powell.
Thank you, Douglas Powell.
Thank you, Douglas Powell.
Flash.
As we end every week, please stay safe, wash your hands.
Please. Thank you.
Really, because that was actually, we started that one during the first part of the quarantine. So stay safe, wash your hands, stay well, and we will see you back here next Sunday at 7 p.m. Have a good night. Bye.
Bye, everybody.